Okay, it is Wednesday, February 26th. We discuss Luka Doncic playing his former team last night. We had Overwatch last night. Updates for the NFL draft. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings, on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, so as we always do, we start out with yesterday's slate. Yesterday's slate on this show has had a common theme. We've had a lot of Overwatch and one exciting basketball game that happened the night before. And so last night was no different. We had the very highly anticipated not return. Luka did not return to Dallas. The game took place in Los Angeles, but matchup against his former team. Luka Doncic played his former team last night. And when they were hyping this game up initially, when Luka got traded, and they said circle that day on your calendar, I thought it was kind of funny. Yes, he's playing his former team. Could you imagine, though, if it was in Dallas? How amazing that would be. I wish. I can't wait for when Luka returns to Dallas to play the Mavs with ownership, Nico Harrison, sitting there watching Luka play their former star come back after they traded him. Now, the thing going into last night was, what I wanted was a dominant performance from Luka Doncic. I wanted a vintage Luka game, putting the team on his back, dropping 30 to 40 points. And so the Lakers win this one 107-99. Luka finishes the game with a triple-double, 19 points, 15 rebounds, 12 assists. The Mavs might be looking at that game saying, we made the right move. 19 points. I can find tens of guys that can give me that kind of performance. Now, he had a triple-double. He's not going to get 15 rebounds every game. That's not Luka's game to get 15 rebounds. It was pretty impressive. But they're looking at that 19 points and they're saying, maybe we made the right move. And we're getting killed. Everyone's killing us. He only put up 19 points. I was hoping we'd get maybe this is me speaking from, a little bit of disappointment. I was hoping we'd get a massive performance from Luka Doncic. One where he put up 30 to 40 points. Not 19. My backup point guard could do that. I was hoping for more of a silencing performance from Luka. I also saw these pictures comparing, from before he got traded, how fat he looked to now, how skinny he looked. He looked exactly the same. It's like the Office meme where they say where Pam gives Creed the two pictures that and says to look for the 5 differences, and they're both the same picture. It's crazy. Look, the trade is still insane. But looking back, I wanted a dismantling of the Mavs by Luka. I wanted him to dismantle his former team. Now, it'll mean more when they travel to Dallas, when the Lakers play the Mavs in Dallas. But that was not the performance I was looking for from Luka last night. I know it was a triple-double. He needed to score 30, 40 points last night. Okay, let's move on we had one other notable game in yesterday's slate, and I mentioned it before, but it's Ovie-watch, 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 Ovie-watch. The Capitals played the Flames, and Alex Ovechkin scored again. He is 12 goals away from breaking the goal-scoring record. It's his 30th of the season. He is having a marvelous season. Marvelous season. Now, the Caps went on to lose the game 3-1 to the Flames. And what's interesting about the whole Ovi chase is not only are the Capitals, not only is Alex Ovechkin having this historic season, and the narrative of this season for the Capitals is what a run Alex Ovechkin has gone on to break this record, to become the greatest goal scorer of all time. But the Capitals have the best record in the Eastern Conference. The Capitals are threats for the cup through all this. So we are talking about Ovechkin breaking the record, but not only that, we're talking about watching Ovi in a deep, deep playoff run. Again, they're the best team in the East. 84 points. They're 1 point behind the Jets, the Winnipeg Jets, for the best record in the NHL. This is a real team. It's not just Ovechkin putting on a little pony show. The Capitals can go on a real run, and it's going to be fun. When the Capitals make the playoffs, there are in sports, there are some players, there are some teams that when they make the playoffs, it's better for the sport. When the Capitals make the playoffs, it is better for hockey. It is better for hockey when we see a team like the Capitals in the playoffs, when we see a player like Alex Ovechkin in the playoffs. And in a season where so far, right after Four Nations just ended, we seem to be having so much going on in terms of growing the game of hockey. It's great to see a team like the Caps putting on a performance, playing well, and getting into the playoffs, and as a big seed, as a top seed, especially after a couple of years of not being great and missing the playoffs. Okay, let's move on. So that was yesterday's slate. And we move on to the NFL. Now, it is draft combine season. Coaches are doing interviews. GMs are doing interviews. They're doing press conferences. And one of the interesting stories to come out of yesterday's press conference junket was narratives surrounding Travis Hunter. Now, Travis Hunter is the wide receiver cornerback from Colorado, won the Heisman, and he is projected to be a top 5 pick in some way, shape, or form. Maybe even, I think we could even probably say that's being a little conservative. I think we could say that he is a top 3 pick. I think that's what it's kind of boiling down to right now, is that he will likely be picked in the top 3. And so Cameron Wolfe tweeted yesterday, Travis Hunter's main position is a hot topic at NFL Combine. Titans number 1 pick, head coach Brian Callahan, and GM Mike Borgonzi said they view Hunter as primarily a cornerback. Browns, with a number 2 pick, their GM Andrew Berry says he's a unicorn, he being Travis Hunter, but they view Hunter primarily as a wide receiver first. Ooh. And now I think about several things when I hear this. One, this is primarily needs-based or philosophy-based. And what I mean by that is, let's say the Titans feel like they need a wide receiver more right now. They have Calvin Ridley, they have Treylon Burks, wide receiver. Basically just L'Jarius Sneed as notable, in their cornerback room. Whereas the Browns literally have nobody at wide receiver. They have Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. So you can see the two teams are maybe positioning themselves more for their actual needs. But it's so interesting to treat a guy like Travis Hunter in this way. And I say that because in all likelihood, you are drafting him and choosing what position he is going to play. So unless Travis Hunter feels one way or the other and he comes out and says, if I'm going to play one, I want to play X position, which we haven't seen yet. But essentially, these teams that are picking in the top 5 are choosing for Travis Hunter what position he's going to play. And we have not heard from either, these were the two teams that mentioned where they would play him, but we haven't heard. I'm interested to see if there are any teams that come out and say we're willing to let him explore playing both sides of the ball. Now, I think it's interesting that the Browns said they view him primarily as a wide receiver first. I mean, both teams used the word primarily, and when Cameron Wolf was saying this, so I guess that leaves room for both teams to allow him, if they draft him, to allow him to play cornerback and wide receiver. But you have to think Travis Hunter has to have some sort of preference in his mind. My guess is it's wide receiver. He came, when he first started out in college football did he start at Jackson State? At Jackson State, I believe he played a season at Jackson State. When he first started out in college, he was a wide receiver. So you have to think that his position of preference is wide receiver. Now, it could be people were in his ear telling him, look, you should be playing wide receiver. It's more lucrative to play wide receiver. And maybe he prefers to play cornerback. But we are witnessing possibly the Shohei Ohtani of football, the dual threat guy, someone who can play both sides of the ball and be elite at both sides of the ball. And when you have two teams in the top 2 picks saying different things, so it would be like if Shohei Ohtani entered the MLB draft and the number 1 pick said that he's primarily a pitcher, and the number 2 pick said he's primarily a hitter. So I find that interesting. Now, we move on because we had more news in the NFL draft world. And that is that Mel Kiper Jr. of ESPN released his mock draft yesterday. A new mock draft. And this is what it was. This was from his tweet. We're closing in on the 2025 NFL Draft. That is just 2 months away. Here's my current thinking on how round 1 could look based on what I'm hearing from execs, scouts, and coaches in the league. Remember, we 2 days ago, we discussed what The Athletic had said about their mock draft. Now we have Mel Kiper Jr. And so number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans, he had Abdul Carter, the linebacker from Penn State. 2nd overall to Cleveland, he had Cam Ward. 3rd overall to the Giants, he had Travis Hunter. Then he had the Patriots at number 4, taking Will Campbell. And at number 5, he had Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan, going to the Jaguars. And at number 7 to the New York Jets, he had Shedeur Sanders. Wow. So I find it funny that we had Shedeur to the Giants for a long time, and now Mel Kiper is flipping that to Shedeur to the Jets. I find it interesting that in the Athletics mock draft, they did not have Cam Ward going to the Browns, and here Mel Kiper does. Meaning, if you think about it this way, in the Athletics mock draft, they had two teams. They had the Giants and the Raiders picking at 4, taking the two main quarterbacks of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. But here, Mel Kiper has two totally different teams taking these two quarterbacks. And so that goes to show with what we're dealing with here, which is nobody knows where these two guys are going to land. Nobody knows exactly how to value them. It is so fascinating how unclear it is right now about where these quarterbacks are going to go. So fascinating. There are so many teams in the top 10, and we spoke about this yesterday, the day before. There are so many teams in the top 10 in need of a quarterback. Not enough demand. Rumors are swirling about maybe Matthew Stafford to the Giants. Yesterday there was a report that Aaron Rodgers wants to play for the Rams, so that would mean Stafford's out somewhere else. There is a lot of demand and very little supply, especially with such a weak quarterback class. And everybody says we're going to look for every option. We're going to try to get creative at quarterback. Joe Shane said that yesterday. We're going to look under every rock. But you can keep saying that. At a certain point, there is a reality, and the reality is that there is not enough good quarterbacks to go around. And so teams will either have to be really good at their development, taking a guy, the question is it worth it for maybe some of these teams to sit back and take some of the lesser named quarterbacks in this draft? Take the Quinn Ewers, the Jackson Darts. Are there any teams in this top 10 who feel like they have what it takes to develop any of the B-tier quarterbacks of this class? And you have to think that those teams that feel that way, that they can develop those B-tier quarterbacks, they'll take a step back. And they won't go all in for two guys that in all likelihood, I hate to say it, but in all likelihood are not going to pan out. I don't like to make declaratory statements. Oh, this guy's going to be a bust. This guy's going to be great. Every year we have quarterback prospects that are considered to be really good, that are busts, and ones that are considered to not be as good, that are great. Remember how bullish people were about Jane Daniels just a year ago? Now it's so obvious to us that he's elite, but people were unsure. People were unsure about his skill set, but it happened to be he matched up well with Cliff Kingsbury, and it worked out great for the Commanders. And so yes, we can go in and say Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, all these other guys, they have these X, Y, Z flaws. But we don't know when push comes to shove until we're pairing that quarterback with the offensive coordinator, until we're putting that quarterback into a system, pairing them with a quarterback coach, pairing them with certain wide receivers, with a certain offensive line, after an offseason being able to focus on some of your flaws, what these quarterbacks will be like when push comes to shove and they are taking a snap for an NFL team. And I think there's a beauty to that this season. There's no consensus pick, so you can get a little more creative. I think that's actually a nice thing. Now, one thing that I just want to come back to now, let's bring this full circle. So we got the two comments from the Titans and the Browns about what they would do with Travis Hunter, yet in Mel Kiper's mock draft, he had him going 3rd to the Giants. And if I'm a Giants fan, I am thrilled if they end up with Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter. Are you kidding me? Add those two to Matthew Stafford and you're cooking. Give me a break about the cold weather. He'll figure it out. Yeah, he's 1-8 in snow games. Matthew Stafford. How often does it actually snow in New York, by the way, during football season on a football Sunday? Not so often. It's cold, don't get me wrong. He'll acclimate to it, Matthew Stafford. I'm not concerned about that. Imagine if the Giants go into next season with Stafford, Neighbors, and Travis Hunter. They are cooking. Absolutely cooking. Are you kidding me? I'd take that any day of the week if I was a Giants fan. Neighbors and Hunter alone would get me hyped. You know, as somebody who digests plenty of New York sports media, I'm not a Giants fan, but I could tell you this is one of the best. That would be one of the best wide receiver cores in New York in quite a while, and it's legitimate. Travis Hunter is going to be elite. I think that he probably, maybe Abdul Carter, but Travis Hunter to me is the best bet in this draft. And so, if the Giants draft him, it's a slam dunk. He's going to be an elite wide receiver in the NFL. I'll tell you that right now. Neighbors we know is great. That would be such a slam dunk for the New York Giants. And it made me think there are several moves in this draft that the Giants can do at 3 that would be slam dunks. Abdul Carter, if he falls to them, I think that would be a slam dunk. Travis Hunter's a slam dunk. And so I think maybe if I'm the Giants, I take a step back from the idea of Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. I really think that. And add another impact player that probably is a safer bet. Okay. So that's what's going on in the NFL draft. Let's move on to baseball. And so spring training is happening. We've spoken about the robo-umps, the ABS system, and the system, again, it works that after every pitch, the pitcher, batter, or catcher has an opportunity to challenge the call that the umpire made, the ball strike call. It is a quick tap of the helmet or tap to your head that you want to challenge. It's very quick. It takes about 10 seconds. The replay goes on the scoreboard, and you see if it was a strike or a ball. You have each team has 2 challenges, and you lose one if you each team has 2 challenges. And so an interesting thing happened in the Yankees-Rays spring training game a few days ago, and Jomboy did a great breakdown of kind of the reality of robo-umps. And what had happened was the pitcher for the Rays, Eric Orz, threw this curveball changeup. I'm not sure exactly what pitch it was. That was called a strike early for one batter. And one batter later, he threw basically the exact same pitch that was called a ball. And the catcher for the Rays instantly challenged the call. And it was so blatantly a ball that the Rays manager, Kevin Cash, laughed at the catcher for challenging it. But this is going to be where the strategy of robo-ump comes into play. You can't say that the umpire called this a ball or a strike before, so therefore now it's a ball or a strike. Players are going to have to learn how to, one, individualize each pitch. When a pitch is thrown, was this a ball, was this a strike, regardless of what happened before? I also found it interesting, Jomboy brought this up. Are umpires going to get offended when somebody challenges a play and it's so blatant? So now the catcher gets it wrong. So now is the umpire going to say, "I was right, buddy," and he's going to squeeze him later on in the count? There are going to be so many interesting strategies when it comes to robot umpires. When to use the challenges, how to use the challenges, What players are really good at it? Are players going to practice calling balls and strikes for themselves? Again, this is not going to be implemented until at least 2026, maybe 2027. But I like the fact that we can get objective replay. There's not going to be any arguing after a ABS review, ball strike review. What's to argue? It's a robot. There's nothing to argue with. All right, that's a show. Make sure you're following on Spotify, following on X, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. This is the Early Game Podcast. We will be back tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.